Hey everybody, welcome to our weekly Intel briefing where we cover one issue on economic security, one issue on physical security, and one issue on democracy to make sure you didn't miss it. First, on economic security, let's talk about electricity and the cost of electricity and a big story that's going on in Michigan right now. To review the bidding, we had a once-in-a-generation ice storm last spring in March. You probably remember up north, we had over 1 million people lose power. We had incredible, sometimes for weeks, we had incredible work that went on by local law enforcement, line workers, fire, first responders, just an incredible community effort. I was up in Alpena getting the back brief last May. It was really incredible work. That was a natural disaster. The state of Michigan wrote to FEMA asking for them to declare it a federal national disaster and then to provide resources to cover the expensive cost of that natural disaster. The state of Michigan requested that FEMA reimburse the state of Michigan for the serious costs associated with that natural disaster. We went back and forth in a very bipartisan way, asking for them to cover all the costs. But the Department of Homeland Security came back and said they would only cover certain costs. The state of Michigan requested from FEMA assistance in reimbursing for these once-in-a-generation costs. And after some bipartisan back and forth, the Department of Homeland Security agreed to pay for some things like bridges and roads and public parks, but said no to reimbursing the state for $90 million of the electricity costs, the costs of fixing the lines and poles and the outages and the things that came from the outages. This is part of a bigger trend from the administration where the president has been very vocal that he doesn't really believe that the federal government should be paying when natural disasters happen in the states. He's denied 9 emergency requests from other states on other national disasters, things that meet threshold. So if Michigan doesn't get reimbursed for this $90 million from the storm last year, then you're going to see those electricity companies charge more to the local residents who were already put through the ringer from the storm. Obviously, the cost of electricity has been a big issue even before the storm. Costs are exorbitant, they're going up. But I think it is just an important thing to put on people's radar. I will say there are ways to get help with your electricity bills if you do not have the means to cover it. We'll put the link below, but the Michigan Public Service Commission is a place that has a bunch of programs. Please reach out to them. But this is an ongoing conversation with the White House to try and get that last 90 million covered. Okay, secondly, on national security, you've probably heard a lot about this peace deal that the Trump administration is trying to broker on the issue of Ukraine and Russia. So just to review the bidding, in February of 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, right? They invaded their neighbor. They took territory, they started a war. That war continues 3 years later. The president has been working on trying to bring this war to a conclusion. He said he was going to do it on day one. He's still working on it. There was a big summit with Vladimir Putin in Alaska in August where they rolled out the red carpet. It's important to note that the way a war ends is really important for whether we're going to have more wars in the future, right? The way it ends sends a really strong lesson to a person like Vladimir Putin on was it worth it to invade? Did you get something from it or were you punished? And just like when a child misbehaves, if they learn they get a cookie when they misbehave, they're going to misbehave again. If there's clear boundaries and they're going to be put in a timeout, they're less likely to misbehave. So the way we react and the way this conflict ends is really important to whether there'll be future conflicts, again, between Russia and Ukraine, between Russia and NATO states. So a new deal is on the table, and it's pretty unusual. First and foremost, there's a lot of deal making going on around billionaires in the United States, billionaires in Russia on things like energy rights, mineral rights, kind of the commercial side of the relationship. There's conversations going on about territory that Russia would get in Ukraine, so they win the territory that they took by force and includes some territory they don't even hold right now. There's a big question on what happens to all the money that was seized from the Russian oligarchs and through all these sanctions, and who would get to control that money. And there's a lot of questions around what kind of security guarantees Ukraine would get out of this so that they could say with a straight face, well, we're not going to be just invaded again by Russia after this war has concluded. I have to say, just on the surface, this does not look like a great deal to create a lasting peace and send that all-important message to Russia, the aggressor. Russia seems to have a big hand in these negotiations and to be getting a lot out of it. Ukraine, I think, is struggling to find the best parts of the deal and how this works for them. And again, we all want the war in Ukraine to come to an end. I think that's a universally held thing, but it's just putting down a marker that it's really important, the terms of the peace deal, to make it durable and to send the right message to the aggressor that you can't just invade other countries. Lastly, on democracy issues, I want to provide a really important Michigan example of how democracy in action can still really work and work in the favor of safety and security for Michiganders and American citizens. November 30th was the 4-year anniversary of the Oxford High School school shooting. That was in my congressional district at the time. It was a deeply traumatic event for everyone involved. We lost 4 beautiful young students when a young 15-year-old took a gun that was bought for him by his parents and went into school and opened fire. So since the shooting at Oxford High School and then the subsequent shooting at Michigan State University about a year later, Michigan changed its laws and implemented a number of things that have proven to help keep people safe. We implemented safe storage laws so that parents who have a weapon and children under 18 in the home are required to secure those weapons. It established red flag laws so that if someone is a threat to themselves or to others, you can go to court and temporarily remove the weapon from their home. And it also, very importantly, set up a legal precedent in our courts, not just for Michigan, but around the country, that if you as a parent leave an unsecured weapon in a home with a minor and they go and use that weapon to commit a crime, God forbid, especially murder, but any crime, you, the parents, can be charged on that crime. And that's what happened in the Oxford High School case, set an incredible precedent around the country. All of those things are now being used in Michigan courts and by Michigan law enforcement. Red flag laws, since they came into place, have been used, I think, over 300 times, mostly initiated by law enforcement for people who are threatening to kill themselves or in domestic violence situations. The judicial precedent, the legal precedent, has been used to charge parents who left a weapon unsecured and a child picked it up and used it in a criminal way against other people. And safe storage, right? If we find a weapon hasn't been secured in a home, that is now something that is in our books. So I just think it's important, particularly on the 4-year anniversary of the Oxford High School shooting, to note that real change has come from some of the biggest tragedies in our state's history. There was also a gun violence task force that was set up. And I think it's important to think about what more can come out of tragedies like these. We'll put the link in the comments so that you can see what a group of Michigan citizens have worked on for many, many months to publish about the next steps forward on creating more safe spaces for our kids.